Hey Theater Geeks, I'm Emily and welcome to Musical Mondays. So I know I missed last week's video and we still have a lot to cover before the Tony nominations come out on April 28th. So you're actually gonna get two videos this week. One today and one on Thursday. Anyhow, last time I posted, I made a video about all of the plays that are eligible for nomination at this year's Tony Awards. You can check out that video right here, or I will also link to it down in the description below. This week, I'm going to be talking about all of the musicals that are eligible for nomination at this year's Tony Awards. Let's get started with new musicals. First up, An American in Paris. Though it includes the same Gershwin music as the 1951 film, An American in Paris on Broadway features a new story. This production tells the story of post-World War II Paris, where we meet an American soldier and a French girl who fall in love in a city that is trying to recover from the war. Previews began on March 13th and it opened on April 12th. Dr. Zhivago is based on the 1957 novel and subsequent 1965 epic film of the same name. Dr. Zhivago follows Zhivago, a political idealist, physician, and poet during the final days of Tsarist Russia. During this time, he is torn between his wife and the beautiful Lara. However, he must fight for Lara's affection, as an aristocrat and a revolutionary also have their eye on her. Previews began on March 27th and it opens on April 21st. Next up, Finding Neverland. Based on the movie of the same title, Finding Neverland follows J.M. Barrie, who is in need of a new hit story. He then meets Sylvia, a widow with 4 young sons, Jack, George, Michael, and Peter. Through his interactions with Sylvia and her sons, he creates the world of Neverland and ends up writing the story of Peter Pan. This is a long-awaited transfer to Broadway, and they actually previewed one of their songs at last year's Tony Awards, where it was sung by Jennifer Hudson. The Broadway production stars Matthew Morrison as J.M. Barrie and Kelsey Grammer as Captain Hook. Previews began on March 15th and it opened on April 15th. Next, we have Fun Home, another much-awaited Broadway transfer. Based on a lesbian cartoonist Alison Bechdel's graphic novel memoir, Fun Home tells the story of Bechdel's childhood and particularly focuses on her relationship with her father and the events surrounding his eventual death, which was probably a suicide. Fun Home is told as Alison is going through her father's things and she remembers her childhood. It features 3 actresses playing Alison as 3 distinct ages: a young girl, a college student, and an adult. It stars Michael Cerveris as Bruce Bechdel, Judy Kuhn as Helen Bechdel, and Sydney Lucas, Emily Skeggs, and Beth Malone as Alison Bechdel. Previews started on March 27th and it opened on April 19th. Next up, we have decidedly the biggest flop of the season, Holler If You Hear Me. Holler If You Hear Me features the music of Tupac Shakur, and it tells a story of love, friendship, family, change, and hope in the inner city. Previews began on June 2nd, it opened officially on June 19th, and closed July 20th. Next up, Honeymoon in Vegas. Based on the movie of the same title, Honeymoon in Vegas follows Jack, a commitment phobe who has finally decided to propose to his girlfriend Betsy. But when a smooth-talking gambler named Tommy falls for her as well, Jack must prove his love in order to win back the love of his life. The music for this one is by Jason Robert Brown and it starred Rob McClure and Tony Danza. Previews began on November 18th, it opened on January 15th and closed on April 5th. It Should Have Been You features 2 very different families coming together to celebrate a marriage. However, when the bride's ex-boyfriend arrives, everything is turned upside down and chaos, plotting, secret telling, and promise breaking ensues. This one stars Tyne Daly, Harriet Harris, Sierra Boggess, and David Burka. Previews began on March 17th and it opened on April 14th. Next up, we have The Last Ship. With music and lyrics written by Sting, The Last Ship is inspired by events of his own childhood in an English seafaring town. This musical tells of Gideon Fletcher, who returns to town after 14 years away from home, where he finds the local shipyard is in danger of closing. He watches as the men who work the shipyard rally together to build a symbol of the life they've lived. Previews began on September 29th, it opened on October 26th, and closed on January 24th. Something Rotten is a rousing comedy set in the 1590s. It follows brothers Nick and Nigel Bottom as they set out to write a hit play. However, the only hit plays in town are written by the local rock star playwright, The Bard. So following the guidance of a soothsayer, Nick and Nigel Bottom set out to write the world's first musical. This one stars Brian Darcy James and Christian Borle, and it started previews on March 23rd and will open officially on April 22nd. Last up, we have The Visit. Often widowed Claire Zachanassian is the richest woman in the world. When she pays a visit to her destitute hometown, the locals hope that she will bring them a new lease on life. But her help comes with a price they may not be willing to pay. This is the final collaboration of John Kander and the late Fred Ebb, and it stars Chita Rivera. Previews began on March 26th, and it will open officially on April 23rd. All right, let's get on with the revivals. First up, we have Gigi. Set in Paris during the turn of the 20th century, Gigi is the story of a teenage girl whose family has matched her to be the companion of a wealthy playboy. As Gigi's free-spirited nature leads her on a journey to find herself, she and her companion discover they've fallen in love. It is written by Lerner and Lowe, stars Vanessa Hudgens, Corey Cott, and Victoria Clark. Previews began on March 19th and it opened on April 18th. Next is The King and I, a Rodgers and Hammerstein classic. The King and I tells the story of Anna, a British governess who has been recruited to teach the royal children in Siam. Her time in the palace results in an unexpected relationship with the King of Siam. This stars Kelly O'Hara and Ken Watanabe. Previews began on March 12th and it opened on April 16th. Next we have On the Town. In this iconic show by Betty Comden, Adolph Green, and Leonard Bernstein, 3 sailors have 24 hours to explore New York City. Each have their own agenda and they are in for one crazy adventure-filled day. Previews began on September 20th and it opened on October 16th. In On the 20th Century, Oscar Jaffe is a Broadway producer who has recently had a series of flops. When he boards a train called the 20th Century, he finds that he is in the car next to his former muse, Lily Garland, who is now a famous film actress. In an attempt to win her back and get her back on Broadway, he tries to convince her to do his next show. The only problem is he doesn't have a next show lined up. This show is by Betty Comden, Adolph Green, and Cy Coleman, and it stars Kristen Chenoweth and Peter Gallagher. Previews began on February 13th, and it opened on March 15th. And the last musical of this season is Sideshow. Sideshow is loosely based on the real lives of Daisy and Violet Hilton. Daisy and Violet are conjoined twins who have spent their lives in a freak show. When Buddy Foster and Terry Connor show up and offer to take the girls to find fame in vaudeville, the girls decide to leave the only home they've known, Daisy with a dream of finding fame, and Violet with a dream of finding love. Previews began on October 28th, it opened on November 17th, and closed January 4th. So those are the musicals that are eligible for nomination at this year's Tony Awards. We'll find out who gets nominated for what in just over a week, but let me know your predictions down in the comments below. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe for more Musical Mondays.